Just want to thank everybody for being here, and thanks for having me again. Every year, this is my favorite day of the year. I mean, all my heroes are right here, and just to get to break bread with all you people is an honor, so thanks. Geoff Bodine was already a veteran driver when he moved to New England in 1975. He was a young veteran, sure, but a veteran nonetheless. After all, in 1972, he had already won the Race of Champions at Trenton. But when he was hired to drive and maintain modifieds for Dick Armstrong's New Style team and relocated from Chemung, New York to Bellingham, Massachusetts, it was the start of something big. With that move, Bodine launched the portion of his career that led to every great thing he accomplished on the national stage. His time with us was actually quite short. He pretty much left this region by 1979, at least as a full-time resident. So we're dealing with 4 seasons, 1975, 76, 77, and 78. In the sweep of racing history, 4 years is the blink of an eye. Yet in that blink, Bodine flashed through New England like a comet, bright and spellbinding. No, we can't ignore his record in other areas. In upstate New York, he won at Shangri-La, Spencer, Oswego, Holland, Lancaster, Utica, Rome, and his home track in Chemung. On Long Island, he won at Freeport and Islip. Then there was Pocono, where Geoff won the 1978 Race of Champions on the 2.5-mile tri-oval, and Martinsville, where he won 7 modified events. In North Carolina, he won modified races at Hickory and North Wilkesboro. He also won at Kingsport, Tennessee, and of course many times at New Smyrna, Florida. Later in NASCAR's late model sportsman class, he won at Martinsville, Kingsport, and across Virginia at South Boston, Langley Field, and the Southside Speedway. Obviously, at the Cup level, Geoff was a 1982 Rookie of the Year. In 1984 at Martinsville, he scored the first victory for a young kid car owner named Rick Hendrick. It was also with Hendrick in 1986 that Geoff won NASCAR's marquee event, the Daytona 500. Later, he won multiple races for legendary owners Bud Moore and Junior Johnson. Among his 18 Cup victories were 4 with his own team. He also won the Sports All-Star race, known then as the Winston, with his own car. But since our concern today is New England, let's look at the time Geoff spent with us. Some of the wiser historians in this room, guys like R.A. Sylvia and Dave Dykes and Pete Zanardi, love to talk about eras. The coupe era, the big block era, Bobby Judkins' Pinto Revolution era, and so on. Well, when you talk about New England racing in the second half of the 70s, you're talking about the Geoff Bodine era. Before 1975, we hadn't seen much of him, but what we did see was impressive. I did some research, and I believe Geoff's first 2 appearances in New England came in 1970 as part of the old All-Star League. Check this out. On August 11th of that year, 1970, he finished 3rd at Vermont's Catamount Stadium on a night when the top 4 read as follows: Richie Evans, Bug Stevens, Geoff Bodine, Maynard Troyer. The very next night at Stafford, Geoff finished 4th behind winner Bugsy, runner-up Don Diffendorf, and 3rd place man Evans, but ahead of Steady Eddie Flemke, who finished 5th. So at the tender age of 21, Bodine was already running shoulder to shoulder with some real heavyweights. But once he paired with Armstrong, boy, did Geoff ever shake things up. In 1975, their first year together, they won the Stafford Track Championship, which was a huge deal. In that same period, some of the wildest racing took place at Thompson in those wonderful Sunday evening small block shows that we all remember. We're talking Hall of Fame talent every week: Flemke, DeCero, Bouchard, Stevens, Cleary, Rosati, Harmon, Miller, just the list goes on. In September of 75, the first ever Thompson 300 packed the pits with more than 100 modifieds. At the end of that long day, in victory lane sat Bodine, Armstrong, and that number 1 Pinto. The same combination won the event in 1976 and 78. Their team was nicknamed the Big Red Machine, and it turned out to be a steamroller. Again and again, it rolled to victory at Seekonk, Waterford, Riverside Park, Westboro, Monadnock, Star, everywhere. Bodine was a 2-time champion of the Yankee All-Star League, a wonderful series of Wednesday night small block shows. In fact, in 1978, Russ Conway will remember this, Geoff won every one of the 6 Yankee All-Star shows, which is an incredible feat. Speaking of incredible and speaking of 1978, that was the year Bodine and Armstrong ran 84 modified features and won 55, the majority of them right here in New England. For most drivers, 55 victories is a damn fine career. For Geoff Bodine, in the era that he owned, it was merely the best of 4 outstanding seasons. By 79, that era was over. Riding enormous momentum, Geoff had gone south to drive late models and to chase his Cup Series dreams. But occasionally he'd still return for a big modified show, and he hadn't gotten rusty. Driving for Lee Allard, he won big at Trenton and Oswego. That same year, '79, teaming at the last minute with New Hampshire's Alan Whipple, Bodine won his 4th Thompson 300 in 5 years. And in '80 and '81, driving a part-time schedule for Billy Taylor in the White Tornado Pinto, Geoff won modified races from Connecticut to Florida. He also gave us New England folks a look at his fender skills by winning the 1980 and 1981 Oxford 250s. Of course, it wasn't all champagne and roses. There were controversial dust-ups with Bugsy at Stafford, Freddie DeCero at Seekonk, Kenny Bouchard at Stafford, Eddie Flemke at Thompson, and of course Richie Evans at Martinsville. But always, this shows, Geoff was willing to mix it up with anybody, no matter how big the other guy's reputation was. A while ago we were talking and recalling those days, and he smiled and said, quote, "Some people liked me and some people booed me, but you know something? If you didn't have rivalries, the fans wouldn't care as much," unquote. He was right, because back then, whether they came dressed in Bodine red or in t-shirts supporting Bouchard, Bugsy, or whoever, the fans packed the grandstands, and that was one of New England racing's real golden ages. I've always found it a little bit troubling that some of those fans, and even some people in the pits, would downplay Geoff's success by saying things like, well, he always had great equipment. Of course he did. Dick Armstrong could afford to go racing in style. But Dick hired Bodine for the same reason Lenny Bowler hired Bugsy and Freddie, the same reason Bobby Judkins hired Eddie Flemke and Gene Burgin, the same reason Bob Viteri and Vic Bombassi, going way back, hired Wild Bill Slater. That's because from day one in this sport, smart team owners have hired the best available drivers. From Armstrong to Bud Moore to Junior Johnson, a lot of owners decided Geoff was indeed that best available driver. Some, no doubt, will consider him the best they ever had. I'm glad I got to see him in his era. I'm thrilled that I got to watch that comet as it streaked past us. And I'm honored to stand here as we welcome Geoff Bodine into the New England Auto Racing Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, Geoff isn't with us today, but he's got a hell of a good reason. If you don't know it, he's actually racing today in South Africa on a brand new 2.5-mile super speedway that was built down there. But I understand that he sent a DVR or DVD, whatever you guys call those things. He sent a video, and there he is.
Hi, this is Geoff Bodine. I want to thank everyone at NEAR for putting me into their Hall of Fame. I really appreciate it. It's a great honor. Of course, I remember racing up in New England, all the great races we had, Stafford Springs, Thompson, Seekonk, Westboro, Waterford, probably forgot a few, Malta, just all the tracks up there. They were great days, a lot of fun. Had a lot of nice race fans. Some of you guys cheered for me, some cheered against me. Of course, when you cheered against me, I call it boo power, and that just made me go faster. So I appreciate all that boo power you gave me back in those days. Of course, all the race drivers that I drove against, and I'm going to forget a whole bunch of you, but so don't get mad at me again. But Freddie DeCaro, Bugsy Stevens, Ronnie Bouchard, Maynard Troyer, Richard Evans, Jerry Cook, Leo Clary, George Summers. The list just goes on and on and on. All you guys that used to race against 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a week. Never forget those days. Of course, the car owners I drove for a few up there. Bob Garbarino, drove his car a couple times. Of course, famous car, the #1 Big Red, we call it, owned by the late Dick and Carol Armstrong. That's what really got me going in NASCAR. Got my name out there. Got me in the Guinness Book of World Records in 1978. I won 55 out of 84 starts. Great year, but we had a lot of great years up there. Big Red, boy, that was a lot of fun. Used to terrorize you guys, didn't I, with that car? But that's how I learned how to drive, how to race. And if I hadn't had those days with all you drivers and at all the tracks. Never would have made it in NASCAR. And of course, you know the rest of my story. Most of you do. Moved south. I was waiting for that phone call up in New England, but from somebody down in North Carolina, but nobody ever called me, so I had to move down there to get somebody to call me and want me to drive their car. First full-time year was 1982 with Cliff Stewart. That really, got me going, and that was my career. Of course, I was Rick Hendrick's first driver. Won his first race for him, and now look at Hendrick Motorsports, Dynasty and Cup racing. Every time those cars go faster and win a race, I feel a part of it. Of course, none of those drivers have ever sent me a part of what they won, but that's supposed to be a joke. Of course, we won Daytona 500 with Rick in 1986. Levi Garrett, sponsor. Late Harry Hyde was my crew chief back in those days, and Gary Nelson was the crew chief when I won Daytona. Really special days. Driven for a lot of great car owners in Cup racing. First one, Cliff Stewart, Rick Hendrick, Junior Johnson, Bud Moore. Gee, I even drove for myself because I was the best car owner. They were great days. I wish I still had that number 17, but that's life. It leads you to different things. I drove for Joe Bessie. He's a New Englander. Had a couple of good years with Joe. But during that time, I had a little accident in Daytona in the first truck race they had down there. My son was supposed to be driving that truck that day, but they wanted me to, and I'm glad I was in it. We're going to win the race. Had a fast truck. But had a little accident. God bless me that day, though. I'm still alive, still racing. I haven't retired, so any of you modified car owners up there might see this. If you needed a driver, just give me a call. Get a hold of me. I'm still driving. Actually, that's why I'm out right now. That's why I'm not in Connecticut at your banquet. I'm over in Bakisa Speedway in the Free State of South Africa. The first Free State 500 race in that country. It's a 1.5 mile racetrack shaped and built after the Las Vegas Speedway. It's a 1.5 mile track. It's great. People over here are wonderful. If you've never been to South Africa, I recommend it. It's a beautiful country, beautiful people, and they do love auto racing. That's why we're here. I'm here with ASA, Dennis Huth. We used to work for NASCAR, bought ASA, and he made this arrangement with the country of South Africa to run this race. I think we're going to be here for the next 4 years, and hopefully longer. We're going to try to get a series going over here where they race every year and 3 or 4 races a year. But I'm hoping right now I'm in Victory Lane celebrating my win, and because we're about 7 hours ahead of you in Connecticut, so the race should be over, and here I am with the trophy, the checkered flag, and got my hat on, and hopefully I'm celebrating that first win. It wasn't easy today. No, it wasn't. Had a lot of great cars, a lot of great drivers over here, and but I'm sure glad I'm in Victory Lane. I want to thank all my sponsors, family and friends for putting this on. Like I said, I haven't retired. I haven't given up. Haven't quit. I'm still racing, still active, and I wish I was up there with you now, celebrating and enjoying all of you up there. I do appreciate the Hall of Fame, and maybe next year I'll be able to get up there and see everybody in person. But thanks a lot, and hey, it's fun to win over here in South Africa. Yay!
A couple of quick things. I really do want to thank Geoff for doing that. I mean, a lot of times guys can't make it to an event, And they blow it off without any recognition whatsoever. But Geoff really wanted to be here and really wanted to send that. So, you know, he loves his days in New England, and we're glad we got to see him. Accepting his plaque today on Geoff's behalf is not only a guy who knew Geoff and Dick Armstrong and Carol Armstrong very well, but a guy who could really appreciate the Geoff Bodine era, because after all, excitement sold newspapers just like it sold tickets. And the guy in that era who had the feistiest trade paper around was Speedway Scene, published by a Hall of Famer and a great friend to all of us, Mr. Belliser.
Thank you. Well, I had a big speech here, but I think Bones and Bodine did enough. So all I'm going to do is accept his plaques and thank everybody. All right.